All right. Hi, this is Rich Kaliba. I'm going to take a few minutes this morning to describe and demonstrate the versioning function that is available in SQL Viewpoint. Version control, as the name implies, is a way to keep a copy of your old object when you modify it and save the changes to a new object. And it's all automatic in your SQL View design process. Version control is a great way to support change control, and it can be handy if you ever need to revert back to a view, before you made that change and saved it, and to compare those old view results to the new view that you just modified. This version control function supports all the SQL type objects. And the SQL type objects can be things like views, reports, tables, and script definitions. It's easy to enable the process and automatically back up your objects as you change them. And it's also a good way to keep track of changes by providing a change history and audit trail of modifications that were made to your permanently saved objects. But that's not all. There are really two flavors of version control. Objects, which I just talked about, is one way of keeping version control, but we can also keep control of export files through scripts and commands used in SQL. Export files are usually created as SQL script objects, and we commonly use the execute command to create these export files. These files are exported as PDF reports, Excel spreadsheets, and as you've seen, even ASCII text files like with CSV delimitations or pipe delimiters, commonly used for EDI transactions. So when exporting these files to the IFS, these production files to the IFS with an execute command, that command could be set up with the parameter to enable a versioned copy or an archived copy of that output to be saved on your system. And we'll review both of these methods in the next few minutes. But first, I'd like to focus on the design object change and the versioning. This chart shows a simple process flow involved when versioning is enabled. After you open an object and edit it, make a change, and then save a copy, the old version is moved to a backup library and renamed with a sequential number. You can view a file that keeps track of this change history. The original object with the original name is saved to the production library and is deployed in the same way the original view was designed, meaning that all existing dashboards, shortcuts, web links that you define for the objects will remain the same, and they won't require any modification. Next slide, please. Version control is enabled by user profile default settings. This setting will control is defined by user and will create version backups when modifying objects. So the tab you're looking at now is the view result, and it shows default settings for a user named Rich G. Note the parameter for repository replace action. It is now set to *VER, and this will enable versioning for this user profile, and I'm going to use this profile for our demo in a couple minutes. Also note the repository library. This is a library that contains saved versions of the original, and this is the only change that's required to start making backups of SQL objects you modify in Viewpoint. So very easy to enable. In the next couple minutes, I will demonstrate the view object modification and version history. Then we're going to change flavors and look in the demo and look at how you can keep a version of an export file that you publish and send out using the export command from a script. So I am ready to jump into a screen demo here. All right. You should see my Viewpoint version now, or my Viewpoint interface.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So for this first demo, I'm going to just open a view, make a minor change to it, save it, and then show you where that history ends up. I have a common view that I use called ABC2B. I'll open it in design mode. We'll make a simple change to the where clause. Of course, we know all our experts know we can put variables here, but I just want to make a change. We'll save the view, and then this process of saving behind the scenes automatically is backing up the old copy and replacing the ABC2 into my production library named Rich G. So that change is made. I press the save button. Now, a couple ways we could look at that is by browsing the backup library, which is called Rich Ver. And if I refresh this list, you'll see that there are several instances of ABC2B in this list. One was just created today on November 17th. So that's one way of seeing the changed or the older objects that you worked with. Or we could read a file. I have a version history file out there where we keep a version history file, and I built a view over that file to display the entries. And here you can see that audit list. Nothing very exciting, but just a list of who made the change, when it was made, what the old number is, what the new number is, and most importantly, a timestamp of when that change was made. So good detail for especially audit history. That's it. That's all it's all that's required to maintain versions. Turn on a switch, make a change. The second flavor of versioning is output files. So we have a script. I'll open this up in design mode. In the script, you can see I use the execute command to run a view called ABC2B to a PC format XLSX, put it in a stream file. You can email it as a PDF. You can any kind of production distribution that you have in scripts. You probably commonly use this process, but you notice there's a parameter called replace, and it's set to VER. So if I run the script from within design mode, and we note the messages at the bottom, you'll see there's an indication that an informational message that the stream file has been versioned. So that means we created a production file and there's a backup of that file or an archive file of the file. How do we know that? Well, one way is we can go to the IFS. Let me pull that panel up real quick. Hopefully the connection remained. Sometimes these connections drop. And there we go. So this is the directory it's saved in. We describe how these directories are created in the user guide, but you can see that there's a list now of rich ABC2 documents. And the interesting thing is the timestamp is embedded in the title of the output file. Now the end user may be getting something called sales history. You're going to get sales history with a timestamp, and that's important because if you're going to archive this stuff, it's easier now to see when they were created based on that timestamp entry. So we created output, and we could also review, my final screen here is we could review the version history from another file that we keep on the system of all the changes that were made. So here's a view reading a file of that same information we just looked at in the IFS of when that file was put out there and a timestamp associated with that. So SQL versioning is a great way to keep track of change history and, back up your SQL objects. I don't know how many times I've had a call where someone said, hey, I made a change and it was a couple days ago. Is there a way I can get back to that? And if you don't have versioning on, it's kind of hard. So it's an easy way to step back your design when needed. And best of all, it's automated by a simple change to user ID to start using that version change control for objects, or by a parameter on one of your output commands.